What will you learn? How to style any component using the Styled Components library, how to attach dynamic props, how to create a theme, global styles, and in the end I will challenge you to create a styled recipe list. I will also give you the solution for the challenge. The fastest way to apply a style to an element is inline using CSS rules. There are other methods such as CSS modules, CSS in JS, but now I present you the Styled Components, which is an extremely popular library being used by very large companies to create websites such as Coinbase, IMDb, League of Legends, Priceline, Spotify, Target, and many more. So if they chose this library to stylize their websites, this is a strong indicator to make us study this library and use it. Let's get started. The first step is installation. I will use the with-typescript-styled-components example provided by NextJS. NextJS is a framework for server-side rendering, but that doesn't matter. You can use any React application with TypeScript support or not, although I recommend using TypeScript. We can install this template using the command npx create next app example with TypeScript styled components followed by the name of the project. Let's say with TypeScript styled components app, and start writing the code directly. But if you already have a React project or have created it in another way, I will install the necessary dependencies. You'll find all the commands used in the description. The next command is npm install save styled components. Be careful, if you choose to install the package using yarn, you'll have to add in package.json the following code. This helps avoid an entire class of problems that arise from multiple versions of styled components being installed in your project. Also, if you use TypeScript like me, you'll have to install the types npm install types styled components, and this is a development dependency. As recommended by Styled Components documentation, it's highly recommended but not required to also use the Bubble plugin. It offers many benefits like more legible class names, server-side rendering compatibility, smaller bundles, and more. Now run npm install Babel plugin styled components, of course as a development dependency. As you can see in the Babel configuration file, I use Next Babel preset and the styled components plugin with server-side rendering support. Now we are done with the Babel configuration. I will install the Styled Components extension for Visual Studio Code that will provide syntax highlighting and IntelliSense. If you use WebStorm, IntelliJ, Sublime, Atom, you can find similar tools by following the link in the description. Let's run the application for the first time using the npm run dev command. Everything is okay. We can check the browser window on the right where the text My Page is displayed in red. Clean index.tsx and now we're good to go. Let's take a quick look at the structure of the project. This is specific to Next.js, so the _document.tsx file contains the getInitialProps, which is a function in whose body is defined the logic for the styled components to work correctly with SSR support. Here is the Babel configuration file and the TypeScript configuration file. We are not very interested in these files. I just showed them to you. Let's write the first component, which is a container component that will render a div tag with some styles. The backticks are used to define a tagged template literal which styled component utilizes to style our components. This is an ES6 language feature. If we pass no interpolations, the first argument our function receives is an array with a string in it. Painless maintenance. We never have to hunt across different files to find the styling affecting a component, so maintenance is a piece of cake no matter how big your codebase is. No class name bugs. Styled components library generates unique class names for our styles, so never have to worry about duplication, overlap, or misspellings. Automatic vendor prefixing. Write your CSS to the current standard and let styled components handle the rest. Easier deletion of CSS. This way of styling the components offers us many important advantages. For example, if I no longer need a container component, I can delete the container.styled.tsx file and the styles associated with the component will magically disappear. We will not have to look for classes in files such as styles.css or in a global style sheet. This is very cool, with no garbage left. Let's define a stylized button. It's a simple button with a few styles. We use the HTML button element. Nice, the button is ready. Let's test it. For this, we import it in the index file and check the browser window. Perfect, our first styled button works, but let's take a closer look at what's going on. The first thing we look at is the default export named styled. This is a low-level factory we use to create the helper methods. It can accept as arguments a valid React component or a tag name like button. After the call of the styled function, a React component is conventionally called styled component because it contains styles. This component can take any props. It passes it on the HTML node if it's a valid attribute, otherwise it only passes it into interpolated functions. For example, adding the role attribute. But I want to have two button variants, a primary button and a secondary button. That means I'll have to pass a variant prop, but how? We have to define the data shape of the button props, which contains the optional variant prop with two values. Primary and secondary. We can pass a function or we can interpolate a function to a styled components template literal to adapt it based on its props. The props argument is the first and only argument. We set the background color depending on the variant property. Now I want the specialized button, a Facebook button for example. We could send props and get this button, or the second option is to override the styles of the button component. We can do this by calling the styled function with the button component and set the new styles. This button will inherit all the styles of the general button. Now I want the Facebook button to be rendered as a tag, not a button. The way to achieve this is to use the as polymorphic prop, so we can maintain the style for several elements without the need to create other components or other props. But be careful that you do not receive intelligent suggestions for an anchor element, but for a button element. As you can see, there is no href suggestion. The styled method works perfectly on all of your own or any third-party component, as long as we attach the past class name prop to a DOM element or style if we are using React Native. Let's see this by building a stylized NextJS link. Okay, it doesn't work now because we didn't set class name, remember? Let's change that by adding a new component called link that will render NextJS link and an anchor. We also make sure we send props where needed. I want to display the two buttons and the link in the column, but I don't want to make a new component, so I'll use the CSS property which is enabled by the Babel plugin. So let's set the display to flex and flex direction to column. Great! Styled Components library uses the preprocessor Stylist under the hood, which supports CSS-like syntax for automatically nesting styles. The ampersand is like a placeholder for the main component. We can set the link color to red on hover. We can define the dynamic size property to set the button size using the attrs chainable method. The object passed or returned by a function, like in this case, will be merged into the rest of the component's props. So size dynamic props will be merged into button HTML attributes. Let's add a funny animation through which our components can breathe. At 10 seconds, our components are probably relaxed. But at 1 second, they just came from a marathon. Now let's improve the code by creating a theme that contains colors in the beginning. Let's create a file called style.d.ts where we extend the styled components data shape. Default theme is being used as an interface of props.theme out of the box. By default, the interface default theme is empty, so that's why we need to extend it. Only for Next.js we will have to add the app component. If you use other templates, frameworks, you will need to open the file like app.js, .ts, tsx, and so on. Theming is possible using the Context API. The theme provider is exported by styled components, so we must wrap the entire application with theme provider in order to have access from any nesting level to the property set in the theme. The theme can be an object or a function. Now we define the theme as an object. Let's change the primary color from red to green to see if it works. Great, now our app has theme support. How can we style the body of the document? Create global style is a helper function that comes to save us. This component must be rendered first in the application, before theme provider in our case. Now I am convinced that you understand what styled components is all about. I challenge you to create a list of recipes that look like in this example. Pause the video, try to solve the challenge, and then come back to see the solution. I hope you learned something useful, and I invite you to subscribe, like and share. If you have any tips, share them with us in the comments section. Let's grow together as developers, and thanks for watching!